exactly where we want to be. It's a clean slate right now, and we go out, we play our brand of baseball. We just worried about this clubhouse and how we go about our business and win games, and that's all that matters.
I'm not saying it doesn't matter. All I'm telling you is, do you want me to answer the question?
I'm sorry, I meant that it was a question. Like, that doesn't matter. I was trying to get to the bottom of, it's simply about you trust Jeremiah in that way.
I just explained the answer and you just repeated the question again. I'm not sure what to say. I trusted him in the lane, okay? I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't know what you keep wanting me to explain to you.
Baseball ain't easy.
It's just that
really
simple.
Mess with your mind a bit, but last year I did really good against them. This year I don't know. Something on me? I mean, I don't even know. They might even know what color underwears I'm wearing. I mean, I don't even know what the heck it is, like.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to Marty Time TV. I'm Marty Caswell. We are brought to you by the all-new Jamul Casino Resort, the Players Place. Man, Padres and Dodgers. Let's get going. Dylan Hernandez, my first question to you. I just changed it. Do the Dodgers, in fact, know what kind of underwear Jeremiah Estrada is wearing? Can you find this out for me, please?
I mean, they might. They seem to know a lot of things sometimes. Other times not so much. Obviously, the first two games of the series kind of looked like the Dodgers kind of had no clue, right, in what was coming at them at all. Yesterday it was a little bit better, especially once Pavetta got out of there. But you never know, right?
You never know. And I had my lead. I mean, you always have these leads, right? And it changes on maybe in a pitch or in an inning. But I thought yesterday, the way Pavetta was cruising after a rough first inning, that we're going to be talking about the Dodgers being held for the third straight day to one hit by a Padres starter. Like how we can go ahead and take away yesterday's results for a second, but how surprised are the Dodgers that the Padres, with all their deficiencies, are right there neck and neck with the Dodgers in the NL West?
It's funny, right? And probably let's start by saying it was a great weekend of baseball. Three really fun games before we get jaded and start tearing into our teams here, right?
Right.
It's funny because I think probably from both sides right now, right? Like if you're a Padres fan, you're probably looking at your team thinking like, man, they're deficient here, here, and here. Mm-hmm. I think from a Dodgers fan standpoint, it's kind of the same thing, right? People are looking at this team. What I wrote, off yesterday's game was basically like, who are these guys, right? Yeah. Are they the team that got, that just completely rolled over in the first two games, or are they the guys, that came out and just pounded 4 home runs yesterday? I think with the Dodgers, kind of right now, the feel is right, like they've had injuries that have kind of like blown holes in certain areas, right? And they've kind of gone through these different phases. At the beginning of the season, it was they had no starting pitching, right? Mm-hmm. Because Glasnow and Snell were down. Then they kind of went into this phase of like, well, the bullpen is terrible. And for the last like 2 months here, it's been where'd the offense go, right? I think they're like a bottom 6 offense, bottom 5 offense in all the major leagues for the last 6-7 weeks. I think, it's kind of weird, right? Because I think if right at the deadline, when you kind of look at what the Padres did, and then they start reeling off all those wins, right? And then they show up in LA last week. I mean, my expectation, honestly, I thought the Padres were just going to steamroll them, right?
They were on a roll at that time.
Yeah. And then it kind of was like, oh yeah, like they're, kind of like, I think from an LA vantage point, it was like, oh yeah, they're still the Padres, right? They're going to like mess this up somehow. Can I cuss on this show, by the way?
Yes, please. You can. My mom watches, but it's okay. Go for it.
Right. They're gonna fuck this up. Right. Okay, right. And that's what it felt like last time. Right. And then, and so you figure, okay, well, they're coming down to San Diego now. Okay. They, after losing, by the way, the Dodgers dropped 2 of 4 in Denver against the worst team, like a historically bad Rockies team.
Yep.
So now you're kind of back to, well, but they're going to play the Padres, right? And like if they, right, like the only time the Dodgers have looked good this year almost is like when they played the Padres. So now you're thinking, okay, they're going to be, right, they're going to roll through these guys. And really the first 2 games, I mean, the first game, look, they just got beat, right? That was Darvish. They've always had
Darvish.
Yeah,
the same version that shut them down in the playoffs last season. Okay.
Exactly, right? Now I think the disconcerting game for the Dodgers was really that second game against Nestor Cortez, And clearly they were looking to like drive the ball, and Freddie Freeman, right? I mean, basically got the same pitch that Cortez threw him in game 1 of the World Series last year for the Yankees, right? Kind of right in the nitro zone there. And, the ballpark maybe kind of kept it in. But I kind of felt that the team, right, as a team, their approach was kind of like, okay, let's just tee off on this son of a bitch. And then it kind of, so that didn't work. And now you're kind of like, okay, what's going on? And I think that internally, it's like, okay, well, we got to start working the at-bats more. And, I think, right, they made Pivetta throw a lot of pitches kind of early. Now, he did get through 6, which, I think the Dodgers ideally would want to get the opposing starter out after maybe 5 or something. But, they were able to kind of get into the bullpen, right? They were able to, like, foul off some pitches and extend at-bats maybe in ways that they weren't able to do the previous 2 days. And so it looked a little bit more like the Dodger offense. And I think people in LA here are kind of like, everybody thinks that the team, right, their team is like the worst team in baseball, right? They could be in first place, right? It's
Padres fans are miserable today. They want Luis Ariz like cut on the spot. They want Mike Schultz fired right now, but that's part of fandom, right?
Right, yeah. And so I think the feel up here is kind of like, well, you know what? They're tied with 31 games left to go. It could be worse. At least there's some positive things going for the Dodgers right now in terms of the starting pitching. The bullpen kind of got closer to becoming whole with, Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates coming back this weekend. Now they didn't really get to test that,
right.
And the lineup again showed at least some signs of life yesterday. Mookie Betts is kind of starting to look like Mookie Betts again for the last couple of weeks. So I think, it's kind of like, okay, well, all things considered, given everything this team has gone through this year in terms of with all the injuries and stuff, it could be worse, right? I do think people are nervous. I think that the feel is that this is probably not the year, this is just kind of feels like one of, how like when teams just bad things just keep happening one after another.
Oh, yes.
They're on a roll, and, I kind of posed that question, which one are the Dodgers? Are they the team that, that was really bad the first 2 games, the one that was really good yesterday? The answer might be that they're both, right? And that's who they are, right? That they're going to have really good games, really bad games, and that it's really going to come down to which are they going to have more of in October.
Yeah. You read about that for the LA Times, by the way, in case I did a terrible job of introducing you to start the show because I was so focused on Jeremiah Estrada and the color of his underwear. This is Dylan Hernandez of the LA Times, the great columnist. And also you do North and South with Tim Kawakami at the Standard, right? Talking about your respective teams, Bay Area and Los Angeles. But for the LA Times yesterday, you wrote about the gettable Dodgers and the enigma of the Los Angeles Dodgers. And let's go on the gettable factor. When you look at, we're going to get to the weaknesses in a second, but when you say enigma, in many ways, that's kind of how I view the Padres too, because we can focus on what Jeremiah Estrada did yesterday versus the Dodgers. And for whatever reason, they are in his head. He has been lights out against every team in baseball. He struggles mightily against the Dodgers. So it begs the question, why did Mike Schultz put him in a situation? Mike Schultz got very defensive, as he usually did, because he will never, ever criticize a player as to why he didn't go to David Morgan or his bullpen. But for me, the Padres are an enigma as well, because they've been clutch, right? Small ball, they're going to bunt you to death, but they have the second fewest home runs in baseball, which to me is shocking. Tatis really made an impact defensively. He gets on base. He's not slugging. Jackson Merrill's in the IL. So I can't figure out really this offense too much, but where do you see as the Dodgers' biggest weakness right now with 31 games left? By the way, both Padres and Dodgers, very favorable schedules.
Yeah, it's got to be the bullpen, right? And, I mentioned Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates coming back. Those guys that have not been good this year, probably because of the way the bullpen got constructed and some of the injuries, right? Scott got kind of put into this, like, okay, he's the closer, right? And I think what made him so good in San Diego last year was like, okay, like Ohtani's coming up. Okay, send him out there. Right. Betts might be after that, but you got Freeman, who's another left-handed bat, and you're kind of able to he was deployed, I think, very strategically, and it kind of just became the closer. The workload, I'm guessing, kind of got to him at some point, and he might have just taken some time off, but those innings aren't coming off the arm, right? Kirby Yates, looks pretty done. The scout that I spoke to yesterday, gave me the opinion that he didn't think Trinan was going to be. Because we were kind of talking, right? I was like, well, if they can get these guys right, I mean, I think Yates, he hasn't even had any good stretches really this year. So you can't really, that's not somebody you can count on. But obviously Trinan is a guy who historically here has been very important to them, was definitely important on them, and them winning the World Series last year. And at least this scout told me that he thought Trinan, right? He's like, I'm not really sure you can count on that this year. So it's kind of the bullpen, right? I think now, and if you look at the lineup too, and this is kind of part of the problem, right? When so many guys are like injured, and I do think, right, I mean, we need to kind of go back to, and I don't want to be making excuses for this team because look, they have like luxury tax included. It's like a $400 million payroll. Okay,
It's insane.
Listen,
this team was supposed to win 120 games. This Dodgers team had the 3 MVPs and the additions they made in the offseason. It was number one, the best bullpen that Dave Roberts was ever going to have as Dodgers manager, and the deepest lineup, 3 MVPs. What happened to this team? I mean, it's
so I think, again, they've just had like a bunch of injuries, right? I think, Teoscar Hernandez had like a growing thing in May. I don't think he's quite been the same since then. Right now, Max Muncy's out. When Muncy kind of came back, they had like a nice offensive stretch, and then he got hurt like almost immediately. And, they kind of went back to kind of slumping. And so the lineup is really kind of shortened up, and ironically yesterday, right, they got the big go-ahead home run from Dalton Rushing in the bottom half of the lineup.
Right.
But if you look at the way this lineup is constructed right now, I could really see this turning into kind of like it did a few years ago when the Padres knocked them out of the playoffs, where you have this very kind of top-heavy lineup, and then like the bottom half is just automatic out after automatic out, And I do think, you mentioned about the Padres and the lack of home runs. I mean, there has been some talk, I think within the Dodgers about just the balls being, right, the dead balls this year.
Yes.
That they're not flying as much as they used to, right? And so I do think that I don't think that's like everything. I do think like, again, like Mookie Betts, right, for whatever reason, probably the weight loss at the beginning of the year probably impacted him more than he would like to admit, and again, like he finally looks like kind of being the dynamic Mookie of old the last couple of weeks, but it took him a while to get there. But, again, this dead ball situation probably isn't helping too much, now. Again, Freddie Freeman's got a bad ankle, and right, and I think you can tell with Freddie more when you watch him on defense. Right, you kind of see like a tall white guy and you think like, oh, like, yeah, of course he's clumsy, but that's not true. When Freddie Freeman got here, one of the things that really impressed me about him was actually his athleticism, right? This guy could really run, defensively, he could move a bit, and you just kind of don't see that anymore. And I do wonder, again, if that ankle has still been kind of affecting his ability to hit for power, right? He's been, so it's just kind of, and it's just, again, injuries have just kind of popped up one after another. And again, I go back to like last year, they started the season in Korea, right? Then, this year, then they win the World Series, and then this year they start the season in Japan,
right?
Right. And this means starting spring training earlier when you have these overseas trips. It's just been like a lot, I think. Right. And maybe you do kind of wonder, I do think that the Dodgers, right. Yeah. And because I do think that the Dodgers probably were thinking, okay, well, we're outspending everybody else, right? We do have the most talent, and that's kind of built in this like little buffer that, maybe another team wouldn't have the depth to quite like make it through. So it very well could be, right, if they were like a lesser team, that they wouldn't even, right, they wouldn't be like in first place, right? I mean, you could argue because it's kind of felt like they've been treading water all year, and that said, you look at it, hey, look, they're still in first place, right? It's despite it's a really weird year because in a lot of ways it feels like everything that could go wrong has gone wrong,
right? And
yet they're not in a horrible position.
No, they're not. And I think, I'm not sure if it was you that wrote about it for the LA Times, maybe it's one of your colleagues at the trade deadline, that the Padres smelled blood in the water. They felt that the Dodgers were vulnerable, which is why you wrote that, right? Which is why they were so aggressive at the deadline. But I mean, getting Mason Miller, getting Ryan O'Hearn, by the way, I forgot, one of your media colleagues yesterday said, like, the biggest mistake that the Dodgers made with their known deficiencies was not being active and not getting Ramon Laureano. As Mason Miller maybe created the most buzz at the trade deadline, but Ramon Laureano has been fantastic. I mean, offensively, he's been clutch. You saw him, robbing Teoscar yesterday, doing his best Jackson Merrill impersonation in center field. How big a deal is Ramon Laureano, and why didn't the Dodgers really do anything at the deadline? Were they surprised the Padres were this aggressive? Did they not know AJ Preller?
Yeah, I think, right. I think one thing about the Dodgers is that they look at like every kind of trade individually, I think, too much, right? They have this thing of like, they want to win every deal, right? And I can't really think of too many instances where you're kind of like, oh, they gave up a lot for that, right? I mean, you go back, years ago to the right when the Cubs won their World Series, right? They gave up Gleyber Torres to get Aroldis Chapman, right? And it wasn't like who's Gleyber Torres. Like everybody knew he was one of the top prospects in baseball, right? He went on, I think, to make a couple of All-Star teams, and like, you know, they understood that. The Dodgers don't do that, right? They don't, at least not on purpose. You know, they traded Yordan Alvarez, you know, but they hadn't really seen him play at that point. They didn't know what they were giving up. But, you know, and I think that the kind of this insistence on kind of winning every deal has kind of hamstrung them a bit, right? Because you are kind of looking at windows that, you know, that are closing, right? And it probably is for the Padres too. I mean, the Padres have this whole ownership situation. That was one thing I wanted to ask you. If you think that that might have added some urgency from the Padres standpoint, given that, you know, kind of going forward from here, right? You look at their offseason, they didn't spend big, you know, and I kind of wonder, right?
Yeah, Pivetta was Pivetta was like the big signing, and he's been fantastic for them, but they really didn't spend any money. And there's a ton of pressure for me. I think this was a huge year for AJ Preller, right? Because he doesn't have the luxury. He doesn't have Peter Seidler anymore. John Seidler is new chairman. I think he has one more year left on his deal. I haven't heard any conversation about an extension. Dylan Cease is going to walk. You know, he's a Scott Boras guy. Michael King is going to get paid. Luis Arraez is a free agent. Yu Darvish, man, I don't know how much longer. I was going to ask you about that. I don't know how much longer he wants to pitch, given how hard he had a battle to get back this year. He has his oldest son Shohei is pitching as well. You know, I think he's going to UCSD. And there are so many questions. It's an older roster, right? Yeah. Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, they're not getting any younger. This to me, he had to go all in for the season. I really think that next year could look a lot different for the Padres.
Yeah, right. Yeah. See, and so we're talking about these closing windows, right?
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, for the Dodgers, you know, we talk about the 3 MVPs here, you know, Betts and Freeman are definitely getting older. Even Ohtani, right? The two-way thing is not coming as easy for him as it seemed when he was in Anaheim. And so you have these 3 guys, they're on the wrong side of 30. Yeah. You only have so many shots at this thing, right? And the thing too is that, you know, when you know, Guggenheim, you know, baseball management bought the team, right? And this was in 2012. And they take over and they immediately started spending, right? They signed Puig, who I think they just saw take batting practice, and they just threw $40 million at him. Yeah. You know, right? They made the huge Adrian Gonzalez trade, right? Taking on Carl Crawford and, you know, Josh Beckett's contracts to get that to happen. And, you know, at the time, the team was very kind of clear, like, hey, look, we're going to spend money right now, but long term, you know, our vision is to build this team through the farm system, right? And the majority of our players are going to come from the farm system. They're going to be homegrown. And if we have holes and things that we need to address, we're going to fill them out, you know, in free agency. They've gone so far off that script now, right? You look at almost all of their top players, they're all free agent signings, right? The one exception is Will Smith. And if you kind of look at their track record in terms of like signing guys, right, or developing players, I mean, it's been Walker Buehler, Will Smith, and maybe Andy Paez, right? I mean, right, he's got like 20-something home runs, but we kind of don't know how this is going to go, right? James Outman, you know, at some point hit like 20-something home runs, and he's kind of like long gone, you know? So you're not really sure, you know, with him. And so they haven't really had this, you know, at least like with the Padres, right? And, you know, the Padres didn't like spend like money. They spent
they trade their prospects.
Right. They spent
prospect capital.
Correct. They spent their prospect capital.
They have one guy. Jackson Merrill is the guy. That's the homegrown guy.
Right. You know, but like they at least have been able to kind of keep this thing going by signing the right guys and developing the right guys and building them into tradable assets. You know, now the Dodgers, they kind of have at least, you know, to me, right, a lot of these, you know, Baseball America, you know, MLB.com prospect rankings, right? Like, you know, I just kind of go back years, you know, and just, I've seen this over the years. It doesn't quite pan out the way, right, these things kind of predict. And so I'm looking at the Dodgers and I'm like, why are you trading these guys, right? I mean, they held on to Gavin, right? Gavin Lux at one point was a top 5 prospect in baseball. They held on to him way too long, right? You know, Bobby Miller was a guy that they held on to, I felt, you know, for too long, right? And like all these guys didn't quite turn into what they were hoping they would. And that's kind of become the norm now, right? So like if I'm them, I'm thinking, okay, the core of my team's getting older. You know, let's now make some trades. And, one thing that was a little bit probably difficult from the Dodgers standpoint, probably like compared to the Padres, was all of the Dodgers top prospects are in the lower levels of the minor leagues, right? We're talking about guys that are all like, 2+ years away probably from making the major leagues. So, in terms of assets, they were like a little bit short. That said, I do think that they were kind of in this like prospect hoarding phase right now, which given their situation, again, I just don't really get, right? And you do kind of wonder, right? They won last year, is everybody, right? It's the front office kind of thinking like, well, we're safe, right?
We have a buffer. We're good.
Nobody's going to get fired now. I mean, a World Series, even in a market like LA, they're
not getting fired because didn't Ohtani write into his contract that if Friedman gets fired, he can opt out?
Correct.
So, he's safe no matter what, right?
He is. Yeah. So that's the thing is, and you kind of do wonder if there's kind of a lack of urgency here, because it's not like these were secrets, right? Like everybody knew they had bullpen problems. Everybody knew they were short an outfielder. And like they traded for Alex Call. I mean, what I would do at this point, given kind of some of the problems they've had with Teoscar Hernandez in right field with this defense, I mean, why not give Alex Call a run, right? But they clearly don't see him as an everyday player, which then kind of makes you wonder, like, why did you trade for this guy, right? Like, I mean, I guess it's like a kind of a piece, and maybe they're hoping Kike Hernandez comes back, and right, and maybe. We kind of had this kind of fake story almost that frankly my paper reported, about, this like weird meeting, right? Basically Mookie Betts dropped into Dave Roberts' office on the road, and Andrew Friedman's there, and the door was open, by the way, right? So like there was kind of no excuse, and I think the writer kind of made the jump of kind of tying that to the situation in right field, asking is Mookie Betts going to move back to right field? And that certainly might come up in the future. I don't know what you thought, but I thought Mookie played great shortstop this past weekend. At this point, I'm not moving him, right? I'm not going to move him, to make room, with all due respect for Miguel Vargas or, Miguel Rojas's bat, right? This isn't, it's not like you're putting in, and Tommy Edman, sure, like maybe that's the ideal situation, right? That was basically what got him to the World Series last year was, with a lot of Tommy Edman at shortstop. But he's got a bad ankle, and they're saying like, well, we're not sure he can play center. Man, like if you can't play center, can you really handle shortstop? I'm not really sure how much he's going to be available at this point. And you get an outfielder, right? You get Laureano, like these problems kind of get addressed. And now it just kind of feels right now the Dodgers don't really know what their team's going to look like heading into the playoffs. Guys are going to be gradually coming back. And again, it's one thing if they still had that nice 9-game lead. Right. Yep. Then you can kind of like experiment with things without it costing you so much. And now, I mean, right. And this goes for both the Dodgers and the Padres. Winning this division could make a huge difference for both teams, assuming they can get a top 2 seed. Right. Getting that first round bye is massive, right? Because it's going to be.
It's huge for the Padres. It's huge for Yu Darvish and his recovery. It's huge for Michael King, who's missed most of the season. He's returning from the IL, hopefully for the second time come this Friday or Saturday versus Minnesota Twins. It's huge. It's huge for Jackson Merrill, who the Dodgers didn't even see this weekend because he has a sprained ankle or a bone bruise or whatever's going on. Not too much clarity on the severity of that injury, but it's winning the division is huge for both teams. That goes without saying. Let's see. Dylan, there's 31 games left. 31 games left for both teams. Let's see. The Padres are at the Mariners. That's one of the toughest opponents for both teams. Dodgers have the Reds tonight, and they're on the outside looking in for that third wild card. The Phillies and the Mariners. The toughest for the Padres is the Reds, the Mets. Wait. Reds, Mets, and Brewers. Yeah, Reds, Mets, and Brewers. But this is to me, I think, is the difference. The Dodgers are going to end their season on the road. Padres, and they ended on the road against the Phillies. Wait, is that right? I'm sorry. At Arizona and Seattle, the Padres finish at home. They're like 19 games over 500, and they finish their season at home. Who wins this division? Based on everything that we've talked about, the weaknesses of both teams.
Honestly, Kershaw. I mean, I've liked the Padres, right? do kind of wonder, we talked about Mike Schilt earlier and kind of his defensiveness and, especially the series here in LA, right? You did really get this feel that the Padres kind of tried to do too much in some of those games, right? And especially that those 3 caught stealings. What the fuck
that
is
was incredible.
right? Like, yeah, it felt a little bit like, okay, we're going to try to make some things right. And that's a sign of a team kind of being in your head here. Now, the one thing, right, these teams aren't going to they don't have to see the Dodgers anymore. As long as they kind of go out and kind of take care of their thing, they can get through this. God, that's a really good. I mean, I really think this is kind of a toss-up. I mean, I hate to kind of cop out on this, but like I could see either, it's going to come down to just like little things here and there, right? It's probably going to be a game or two. I'm guessing there's going to be, right, like, both teams are going to fuck something up at some point. The Dodgers, their defense hasn't been great this year. They're gonna do something that's gonna cost them a game here, and the Padres win that day and they fall back. I mean, that could be it, right? And so I really think it's gonna be kind of a thin margin type of thing. And I think, like I said with the Dodgers, I think they're both right. We saw what the Dodgers are this weekend. That's who they are right now, right? They're a team that can play horrible baseball and really good baseball, and it's going to be like, which kind of days do they have more of, And I, like, again, I think yesterday you like the fact that like Yamamoto kind of took it yesterday, right? And even when he fell behind, he kind of stayed it. He hung in there, right? The Padres ran up his pitch count early. He somehow got through 6. That said, the day before, Glasnow, the way he just came unglued, right? Doesn't seem, he's the kind of guy that when kind of something goes wrong, he seems to kind of,
falls apart a little bit.
Yeah, he falls apart a bit, And on the other extreme, you have Kershaw, right? So, I think it's going to be kind of up and down for both teams. I don't think, the one thing is, though, is that you do see when the Padres start feeling good, right? And they kind of start playing with that type of swagger. And you can always kind of tell by watching Manny Machado, right?
Oh, yes.
Manny Machado's body language tells you the story of that team. And you know what? This is as good. I mean, I think, and he's got to know, right? He has to know that, again, his window is closing, right? To win a World Series. And so I think, I generally tend to like bet on guys with like a lot of talent, and there are not many guys in baseball more talented than Manny Machado.
I would completely agree with you there. Okay, the final, I'm looking to last week. I know that right now the Padres have the Vetter Cup. You probably have no idea what the Vetter Cup is, but they're playing the Mariners. It's some trophy between whoever wins the season series. It's going to be the Mariners will have that. Milwaukee, Arizona is how the Dodgers finish on the road. Padres finish with. I'm sorry. The Padres finished with Milwaukee, Arizona. Brewers may already have the number 1 seed locked up by then, so that could be significant. The Dodgers finish on the road at the D-backs and the Mariners, who are of course fighting for a playoff spot. My last question to you, Dylan. Okay, and I love this footage. I always love watching Ohtani and Darvish and how they interact together and the respect that they have. Let me see. Is it showing up? Come playoff time, is Ohtani even the rotation, or would the Dodgers prefer the way things are going right now for his focus to just be as a hitter?
God, that's a great question. I mean, because to me, he's the best pitcher on the team. I know the last couple starts have been like a little bit rough, but his stuff is nasty. I don't know how you can start, either. Right. I mean, if I'm kind of looking at it, the 2 guys that like you might put in front of him are Yamamoto and Snell. Right. Snell's been really good. Okay. But do you trust Tyler Glasnow more than Shohei Ohtani? Like, I don't think so. Right. I mean, from a stuff standpoint, yes, Clayton Kershaw's Clayton Kershaw, but one guy throws 100, the other guy throws 90. In that situation, I like 100. And I do think that this year the NL, right, there's especially in the division series, there's a kind of that extra day built into the schedule. So I think the Dodgers, I think he's going to start, right? I think at the end of the day, whatever it is, he's going to wind up starting, right? For whatever reason. Maybe somebody else goes down or whatever. I think he's going to start. And the Dodgers are going to probably try to take advantage of the off days and the way they are to kind of make it, as less burdensome on him as possible. But I just can't see a situation where like Ohtani's just going to be, I think he's going to want to pitch too. right? And this is kind of the one really, I think, kind of important thing too to remember. They're paying him $2 million a year, right? And I think it's one thing, you take like Juan Soto, he's getting paid $700 million, right? Kind of pretty straight up. If Steve Cohen, the owner of the Mets, tells him like, hey, I need you to do this for me, or I need you to make this appearance, he kind of has to do it, right? I mean, Ohtani is printing the Dodgers money. I mean, he has kind of by kind of forfeiting his, or deferring his salary until later, and kind of printing money for the Dodgers the way he has, he kind of has, right, some leverage on the team here in terms of like what he wants to do. And he's worked really hard, I think, to get back not just to this point, but also I think he's exercised a lot of patience, right, in terms of, I don't think, I think, right, you got to remember too, I think it was when he was in Japan, they kind of shut him down temporarily, right? And that was actually because it was almost like he was doing too much, right? He was feeling good. He's like, hey, I'm, starting to feel ready. And I think the team kind of put the brakes on him, and he kind of went along with it thinking like, okay, this is what's best for us long-term. I don't, short of him, thinking that like his pitching future is in jeopardy, I expect him to start. I think he's going to have to start. And I think that I think the other players will want him to start. It's, I think you've heard, there was a game, I can't remember earlier this year, he gives up a home run in the first inning and then hits one in the bottom half, right? He got the runs right back. And the effect that had on the team, right? It's certain guys kind of pick guys up. I think Ohtani has to start.
My last question, I mean, Darvish as well as really any member of the media that's ever covered him. What's his window? How much longer do you think Darvish wants to go? I mean, he just returned from the IL. Of course, he got injured. He had the inflammation in spring training. It took him a while to work his way back. How much longer do you think Darvish wants to go? And when he signed an extension, I mean, a couple of years ago with the Padres, he even said that he was not likely going to be pitching. He was not going to see the end of that contract.
That's a good question. I mean, God, he's just so good still, right?
I know.
And I think as long as he's good, he'll keep pitching, right? Because I don't think that it's unless I think if it gets, right, if the physical problems get to a point where it like starts affecting the performance, right? Obviously now it's affecting more availability than I think it is the performance, right? And because the one thing about him is he really like loves baseball, right? I mean, you have to love baseball to learn how to throw 15 pitches or whatever it is he can throw, right? I mean, that's kind of, years ago, he did an interview on Japanese TV that I was watching, where he talked about like, that's like his hobby, right? His hobby is kind of like changing grips and seeing what the ball will do and stuff. And, kind of the way he's going, usually you at this point, like you would kind of start seeing like a decline, right? In kind of stuff and performance and stuff. And again, he hasn't been available probably as he would have liked to the last couple of years, but it's still there, right? He's still really good. And until again, like, maybe at some point, right, you get to a point where maybe like a back or something like that goes where it becomes really, really almost just impossible to kind of pitch the way he does. But until like there's kind of an impediment, I don't know. I kind of have a feeling he's actually going to finish this contract.
You do?
Yeah, because the very Japanese thing to do is always like,
honorable.
You under promise and then like you over deliver. Right. Like it's interesting because anytime I've like reached out to like, the few times I've gone to Japan to kind of report from over there and you talk to the team and can I talk to this person? They're like, well, I'm not sure. They're very cautious about it. Right. And then next thing you know, like everything that you asked for kind of gets put on the table. And I just think that they don't want to get in a place where they promise something that they can't deliver. Look, and like with Darvish, in all fairness, right, these are like legitimate concerns. He is older, right? He does have like a variety of like physical ailments, but it really wouldn't shock me if he, again, he's a smart guy. He reads about like medical stuff and nutrition and like he educates himself.
Nutrition, which he has on his Instagram.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
And so I think he's going to do everything he can to kind of keep himself healthy. And if he's healthy enough, I see him just keep pitching because it seems like he's still having fun out there. I don't know. I think, I was the last time we were down in San Diego. When was it? Yesterday I dropped in just to kind of say hello really quickly. But maybe it was about a month ago, right?
Okay.
That we were last in San Diego. we
Longer
talked
than
for a
that.
while, maybe. Yeah. But, we talked for a while, and I don't know. I just kind of got the feeling he's still like enjoying all this. I think he likes the team and everything. And I mean, maybe that's one thing that affects it too, right? It's kind of like what happens to like the Padres from here. Maybe if it gets to a point where like they're just getting, they have to kind of sell the team for parts and everything, right?
Yeah,
If they
right now when you're winning, it makes things easier. And you mentioned liking a team. It's so different from the situation a couple of years ago. There's a genuine camaraderie in that clubhouse. He and Manny Machado, their lockers are right across from each other. They have a very, very tight bond. As a matter of fact, when Machado homered against the Giants, he credited Yu Darvish for giving him advice right before it was at bat. So there is something there. So maybe if it's a winning situation, then he can keep pushing himself. We'll see.
Yeah. No, you're right. He loves Manny.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. By the way, my last thing, I keep saying the last thing, Dylan, but I could talk to you forever. But I'm going to rat out a couple. I won't mention their names, but I'm going to rat out a couple of your LA media colleagues. After the Nestor Cortez dominance on Saturday, they were in the press box elevator talking about needing to look up wild card hotels, because that's where the Dodgers were going to end up. So I know both fan bases are on edge, but I don't know. I don't get the sense that the people that cover this team are convinced that the Dodgers are going to run away, are going to win this division. So we'll see. 31 more games.
No, again, you're right. It's the team that you can't look. When I was a beat guy, it didn't matter how good the team was. I was always kind of like, oh man, they don't have this, and that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just kind of that's the nature of sports, right? And even the guys on the team will be telling you, hey, we need this, we need that. I remember my favorite was always Larry Boa, the third base coach for Joe Torre, would constantly be coming around. Have we made a trade yet? Are we going to get anybody? What's going on today? What are you hearing? Right. And it's like, Larry, you guys what year was this? This was the year 2009. Wow. They ran away with the division, right? They were great at the beginning. They just destroyed everybody. Mm-hmm. And Larry was just worried, like, we need another guy. We need another guy, So, yeah, that's kind of normal. And again, I think if you look at the Dodgers right now from right the vantage point of seeing them every day, they, again, they are gettable, as that scout said yesterday.
They are gettable. All right, Dylan, I can't thank you enough for your time. I have a feeling I will be seeing you in about a little over a month. The bigger question is, it will be to start in San Diego or to start in Los Angeles. I guess we're going to find out. People can read your excellent work at LA Times, and of course, follow you on the North and South podcast with Tim Kawakami of The Standard. Dylan, you're the man. Thanks as always for being so generous with your time.
No, thank you so much.
Oops. Okay, that was Dylan Hernandez of the Los Angeles Times talking about the Padres and the Dodgers and the NL West. It is the start of the Vetter Cup tonight. And yes, this is huge because there's 31 games left for the Padres and the Dodgers. The Mariners are 70-61. They have the third spot in the American League wild card, while the Dodgers are playing the Reds, who are 68-63. They're pretty much on the outside looking in for the wild card, but you never know with the teams that they are chasing. All right, guys, we have AJ Caswell tomorrow. I'm sure we'll spend a lot more time talking about Mike Schill's decision to go ahead and use Jeremiah Estrada in that situation. We'll see what happens moving forward, but huge one tonight. Let's see, it's JP Sears making his third start for the Padres versus Bryce Miller of the Mariners. As we close out, I'm going to go ahead and play a little bit here from Gavin Sheets, Padres outfielder Gavin Sheets, just talking about the 5-2 homestand overall. And really, the NL West race is on. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Marty Caswell here on Marty Time TV. We are brought to you by the all-new Hamul Casino Resort, the Players Place. AJ Caswell is tomorrow. Here is Gavin Sheets. Gavin, what do you take away from this homestand, this final series versus the Dodgers?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what we expected. It was who could get the big hits and the big moments, and it's just a really solid series. Obviously we came away with the first two. They came away with today, and the atmosphere was great. It was good baseball both sides, and each game was just deciphered by who could get the big hits in the late in the games.
Is that kind of pretty much how you expect this division race to go down?
Yeah, I think that's just playoff baseball. It's those are the teams you got to beat, and that's how games are decided. There's never going to be a one-sided series, or it's just going to be good baseball back and forth, which is what this was. And they came with the big hits today.
What did you think of Ramon Laureano doing his best Jacksonville impression?
Yeah, that was a great play. To get away with running that inning was huge. That inning could have set the tone for the game one way or the other. And for us to leave it there with one run and come back in and get some momentum back on our side. That was a big inning for Nick. Great job battling there.
So we're taking 2 out of 3 from the defending champs. You're now in tied for first place. It almost feels disappointing in a way. Is that kind of odd?
I think it's a good thing. I think we expected to win today. We expected to win each game, and that's what it's got to be. It can't be going out there hoping to win. It's got to be expecting to win, and I think that obviously we're pleased with the way we played this series. Obviously, we wish today went differently, but that's the way it should be. It should be expectations. We should win.
How do you feel like you're ready to win with the last amount of time to top the division? How excited do you think it's going to be?
Exactly where we want to be. It's a clean slate right now, and we go out, we play our brand of baseball. We just worried about this clubhouse and how we go about our business and win games, and that's all that matters.
Final game versus the Dodgers. Like how much heavy daily scoreboard watching will you be doing?
None. If we win every game out, we'll be fine.
Team's been struggling. Did you find yourself regretting the situation more and more when?
Can you rephrase that question in a better way for me, please?
In a better way?
Yes.
Well, did you?
Are you asking me if I was regretting what happened because my team struggled?
Well, when you're not out there, you can't help.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to be with my team. I couldn't. As a player who plays baseball, I couldn't play baseball. I would have liked to have been out there with my team.
Did you regret it all what you did after getting suspended?
That's the same question there. Again, what happened, happened. I'm ready to move on. I'm just happy to be out there and play baseball.